If you want to direct your question specifically to one member of the panel or t'other, feel free to do so. Well, it's an informational meeting for people who want to ask questions about TPP, and I'm sorry, Madam, I had people come up to me in morning too who have driven a long way, people who are in business who've come a long way to be here, and with the group... No, because the side of information that's presented here is the side on the stage, and there are a lot of people who've driven here and come here to get... I'm not going to have an argument with you, Madam. I'm trying to explain what the rules of engagement here are. Okay? It is an informational meeting. It's a roadshow.
So this intellectual commons is something we value. And I'm hoping... seriously wondering how on earth
Catherine, can we
hold on.
Can we get to a question? Yeah.
Yeah, I am. You know, it is really difficult when you're nervous in front of a big group to be taking these big issues and trying to focus them
Catherine,
on a commercial...
So my advice to you would be
just
it
a
simple.
Minute, please.
Hectored by you.
And
I'm not hectoring you, sir.
It just does feel like that. Anyway, I'll keep trying.
Please.
I'll keep trying.
Okay.
So what I'm concerned about, what I'm concerned about, is the intellectual commons of this country, most of which is recorded in stories. And because I do a lot of treaty work, I hear those stories from tangata whenua as well as tangata tiriti. And people are not happy. There's been the deterioration of the water quality and so on.
I'm sorry, Margaret, we do have to get to a question.
I am. And what I'm trying to explain is the limitations of my question. Because all right, I'll get to my question, and then please don't shut me up for a moment, because otherwise the question won't be clear. So my question is the Creative Commons licence at risk under the TPP? And the key question there is commons, because there is no methodology to date to properly be able to measure what we hold in common.
My name is Charles Drace. I'm with It's Our Future Christchurch. I've just been a delegate to the TPPA Roadshow held in Latimer Square here in Christchurch, which about 100 people attended, mostly business people, but a lot of concerned citizens from different areas in the community. In terms of the way the roadshow was designed and run by Sean Plunkett, who's turned out to be quite a bully, it was obviously that they wanted to prevent putting questions in context. They said we could ask questions, but we couldn't explain why, and it was designed to prevent debate, so that we asked questions, they answered, and we couldn't come back and debate those issues.
It's interesting what you just said before about saying that we weren't going to go into something if it wasn't in the net interests of New Zealand. That's the same sort of statement that Tim Grosser made before
Genevieve, can I ask you to get to a
the
question?
dairy deal.
Get to a question.
So yes, I'm glad that you mentioned Japan. How many people in the audience are actually...
No, Genevieve, it's not about asking the audience questions. I need you to get to a question.
Nobody, so that was really relevant. But Japan, what I'd like to know is with the TPP, was there any view to looking at collaborating with Japan and all the different countries to help Japan to stem the tide of radioactive waste that's been pouring into the Pacific Ocean for the last 5 years from Fukushima? Because that seems to be like a really good thing that you would do in a big agreement like this, because obviously that is a global disaster. If it's only little fishing subsidies that you're concerned about, I think we've got a lot more to worry
Genevieve,
about.
So the question was Fukushima and the nuclear cleanup?
Is the TPP going to be used to help Japan to stem that tide of nuclear waste? Are you using it to look at Japan's whaling policies, and are you using it to look at the slave trade in Malaysia?
Okay, thank you.
So those people expecting the government finally to debate, because they've avoided debate all along for the last several years, we weren't going to get it here. We were just not going to get the debate here. There was a lot of concern about climate change, water shortages, unfair advantages of big corporations affecting the poor, and the workers and labor and so on. And most of those were just not answered successfully at all. In fact, there was a big cover-up, and at one stage, one question David Walker took about 10 minutes to answer, which was obviously a delaying tactic to make sure that other people, didn't have as much chance to ask questions as we had all anticipated. One of the points that I made was that he put figures on the board of how the agricultural export industry in New Zealand, industries in New Zealand would benefit, but he never told about the costs, and he never told about the tariffs that are still in place. So what actually happened to the TPPA is New Zealand has to reduce all their tariffs on any agricultural import from any place in the TPPA country, any country in the TPPA range, the 12 countries in the Pacific. But the other countries are still allowed to keep their tariffs in place. And in particular, the United States is allowed to keep tariffs on dairy products for up to 30 years. But we have to reduce all of our tariffs immediately. This puts the farmers at an incredible disadvantage. And I asked them if they were going to subsidize the farmers because they're going to lose so much money under this TPPA deal. And they said no, they had no plans on subsidizing the farmers or giving them any help whatsoever. So I think this is an important point that came out, that they are not prepared to front up with the costs. They're not prepared to deal with the cost. They're leaving that to the taxpayer, they're leaving that to individual small businesses, they're leaving that to individual people, and basically only saying that they're going to be a big benefit out of it. But even that, they say there's $2.7 billion that we will gain in exports by 2030. But then they also said that there's $80 million a year it's going to cost New Zealanders, not the government, but New Zealanders, to put the TPPA in place. Now, that's 60%. The cost of $80 million a year is 60% of the 2.7 that we're supposed to be, 2.7 billion that we're supposed to be gaining. And so it just the whole thing was like a circus of cover-ups and trying to avoid any of the tricky questions. And it's a real disappointment that the government continues to evade communicating with the public and debating with the public.